Z and George are getting ready to interview a candidate for their team. To ensure an equitable hiring process, they are mindful of how their biases can impact the interview and decision-making. Z sees the candidate as from a certain educational institution and immediately wants to recommend her for the position based on this credential. Availability bias occurs when we overestimate the importance of certain information that is readily available to us. Z pauses for a moment to clear her mind and reads further into the resume. Z observes that the candidate exudes confidence and speaks with a commanding presence. This is charisma bias, keeping her engaged in the conversation. George also notices that, but decides to focus more on the candidate's capabilities and qualifications rather than how they speak or come across. Although liking what the candidate has to say, Z becomes fixated on a small typo in the resume. Another bias, the halo and horns effect, allows one trait, positive or negative, to overshadow everything else about a candidate. Z decides to note the minor typo, but evaluates attention to detail in other ways. George had prepared a series of technical questions, but has a gut feeling. He's conducted a lot of interviews and has a good feeling about this one. That's overconfidence bias. Past hiring decision successes and initial impressions should not influence this decision. He decides to ask his questions to learn more about the candidate's experience without making any assumptions. Z notices that she and the candidate shared a previous employer. That's affinity bias, when we favor people with similar characteristics or backgrounds as our own. She recalls the wonderful time she had working there and feels an instant connection. She decides to put that common background aside, as she can't base her preferences on it. George is about to give his final recommendation on the candidate. When making a candidate selection decision, one can sometimes get influenced by what other people think. Bandwagon bias is a form of groupthink where we follow others' opinions without exercising our own critical evaluation. George recognized how Z influenced him and instead trusted his own experience. Z and George played a key role in helping the hiring manager select the most qualified candidate by actively working to mitigate their biases during the interview process. Strive for culture add rather than culture fit. It is everyone's responsibility at MacPhil to mitigate our biases and ensure an equitable hiring process.